My mother-in-law hijacked my baby shower to announce her own name choice, so I called the cops and banned her from ever meeting my child. I'm 29 years old, married to my amazing husband Gary, and currently pregnant with our first child. It's been such an exciting journey so far. Gary and I have been together for a long time and got married 4 years ago. We started trying to conceive last year, and were absolutely thrilled when we found out I was pregnant 6 months ago. We've faced life's highs and lows side by side, and the news of our baby has brought a new layer of happiness into our relationship. Each day brings us closer to meeting our little one, and we can't wait. Pregnancy has been a whirlwind of emotions, from the thrill of that positive test to the magical feeling of baby kicks. Gary has been my anchor through it all. He's attended every doctor's appointment, reads parenting books with me, and is helping set up the sweetest nursery for our baby. We're fully in baby prep mode now, talking about names, decorating the nursery, and dreaming about the future. Seeing Gary so excited to become a father truly warms my heart. He's fully committed and shares every part of this journey with me, embracing both the challenges and the joy as we get ready for parenthood. 2 months ago, we decided it was finally time to share our big news with the family. We had waited until we crossed the critical first trimester mark and felt completely confident in the pregnancy. We invited our parents, close family, and friends over for lunch. They thought it was just a casual gathering, but once they noticed my baby bump, their surprise turned into pure happiness. My mom burst into tears the moment she saw me and confirmed what she already suspected. She completely understood why we waited and was overwhelmed with joy at the thought of becoming a grandmother. However, Gary's mom, Barbara, had a very different reaction. Instead of sharing in the joy, she became angry when she found out we had kept the pregnancy private. She felt excluded and accused me directly of intentionally leaving her out. Despite my calm explanations about our reasons for waiting, she stayed visibly upset and barely spoke to me for the rest of the event. Her attitude cast a cloud over what should have been a joyful occasion. Throughout the day, Barbara avoided me completely. She wasn't just cold toward me, she was also rude to my mother, who had always been kind to her in past interactions. Barbara buried herself in her phone, barely participating in any family conversations, while the rest of us celebrated together. Her bitterness was obvious. She kept telling everyone how hurt she was that she hadn't known about the pregnancy sooner, saying she felt robbed of precious time with her future grandchild. Gary and one of his brothers noticed how upset she was. As the tension kept building, I eventually hit a breaking point and had to step outside to get some air. My mother followed and stayed with me until I felt composed enough to rejoin everyone. Later, when the evening came to a close, Barbara made sure to say goodbye to me last, and even then it was just a curt hello and goodbye. I could tell from the looks Gary's sister and parents had been giving me all day that they were disapproving too. Afterward, Gary walked his parents to their car, and that's when everything exploded. I was still standing in the foyer when I overheard their heated argument. Barbara used the moment to unleash all her anger, turning what had already been a tense day into something far worse. Thankfully, all the other guests had left by then, and it was just me, my parents, Gary and his parents in the house. Barbara angrily told Gary she couldn't believe I had the nerve to keep the pregnancy from her and accused me of not valuing family. Gary calmly explained that the decision to wait was mutual and that we simply wanted to be sure everything was okay before telling anyone. But that only seemed to make things worse. Barbara snapped, "This is our grandchild we're talking about. I deserve to know from the very beginning." Gary replied firmly, "Mom, it's not about what anyone deserves. It was a choice we made together. She just wanted to be careful." Barbara retorted, "Careful? I'm her mother-in-law. She should have trusted me with this. This is all her fault." That's when Gary lost his temper. He had stayed composed up until then, but hearing her continue to attack me was too much for him. Accusing me directly, I watched as Gary's face flushed with anger. He told his mother, firmly and without hesitation, that it had been his decision as well not to tell her, and if she was going to blame anyone, she needed to blame him too. He insisted she stop making a big deal out of it and move on. But Barbara wouldn't let it go. She snapped that Gary was letting me control everything, and as his mother, she had the right to know first if her son was having a child. Gary didn't back down. He told her to stop attacking me, that he loved her, but she needed to leave before saying something she couldn't take back. Barbara stormed off, leaving Gary standing at the door, visibly frustrated and disappointed. I hadn't realized I was crying until the tears rolled down my cheeks. Her cutting words had left me stunned and hurt. Gary noticed immediately, rushed over, and gently brought me back inside. My parents, sensing the shift in mood, stayed behind for a while until I had calmed down and felt more stable. But Barbara didn't stop there. Later that night, I received a message from her. The moment I saw her name pop up on my screen, my anxiety spiked. Her message read, "I must say I am deeply disappointed in you. You knowingly kept a significant piece of information from me, and I find it absolutely unforgivable. I can't believe you would rob me of the joy of knowing about my grandchild from the very beginning. This is not how a family should operate, and I find it disrespectful and hurtful. Instead of apologizing to me for your immature actions, you're now causing a divide between me and my son. Shame on you." Her words pierced through me. I was torn between frustration and pain. I showed the message to Gary, and he was livid. He couldn't believe his mother would say such things or place all the blame on me. He immediately called her and warned her never to send me messages like that again, especially since they were clearly upsetting. He even threatened to cut her off if she continued behaving this way. Gary's stern tone seemed to shake something in Barbara. Suddenly, her attitude changed. Instead of acknowledging any wrongdoing, she tried to smooth things over by offering a solution. She said the only way she could forgive us for what she saw as a betrayal was if we allowed her to host a baby shower. Both Gary and I were caught off guard by this sudden shift, and while she insisted nothing would bring her more happiness than planning a beautiful celebration for us, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more about control than reconciliation. Gary looked at me, clearly torn. I stayed quiet, still unsure about her motives. To me, Barbara's change in tone felt less like a heartfelt gesture and more like a power play to reassert herself. But Gary, always the peacemaker, wanted to believe this could be an opportunity to mend fences before the baby arrived. I shared my concerns with him, telling him that letting her take over might just reinforce her belief that her behavior had been justified. Gary understood where I was coming from, but he hoped that giving her this chance might ease the tension and build some harmony. Reluctantly, I agreed, and Gary called Barbara to give her the green light to begin planning the baby shower. Barbara was thrilled and thanked us for letting her take the lead. Even though we had given her responsibility, I assumed she would still involve me, ask for my input, check in about themes or activities. But as the weeks passed and the date drew closer, I realized Barbara had taken full control, without involving me at all. She bought all the decorations, picked the games, and planned every activity, without even consulting me. When my mother reached out to talk about the shower, Barbara coldly told her that everything was already arranged and that the event was meant to be a surprise for me. The complete lack of communication and disregard for my preferences left me disappointed and upset. What should have been a beautiful celebration of new life had turned into something I no longer felt excited about. When the day of the baby shower finally arrived, there was a strange blend of excitement and tension in the air. I arrived at the venue, a local banquet hall, surrounded by my closest friends, all eager to celebrate our growing family. But the moment I stepped inside, I was stunned. Barbara had gone overboard with the decorations. The entire room was engulfed in a ridiculous sea of brown and beige balloons filled every corner, following a theme entirely of her own invention. I absolutely hated it. The whole setup looked like a poorly executed safari concept, brown and beige everywhere. It completely clashed with the soft pastel aesthetic I had dreamed of for my baby shower. I had envisioned something gentle and elegant, but clearly, Barbara had gone in the exact opposite direction. The tension in the room grew worse when I spotted a massive banner near the entrance, a huge collage made up entirely of my husband's baby pictures with Barbara. Everyone stared, visibly confused. No one understood why she thought it appropriate to display my husband's childhood photos at my baby shower. When I gave her a questioning look, she simply laughed it off and said she assumed our baby would look just like Gary. She added that she was so proud of how cute he had been as a baby and wanted everyone to see. I stared at her in disbelief, wondering if she had truly lost it. It was painfully obvious that she was trying to make this day more about herself and her experience as a mother than about me and the baby I was about to have. As more guests arrived, their expressions shifted from confusion to polite discomfort. The balloon explosion and the massive shrine to my husband created an environment that was far from the joyful, graceful celebration I had imagined. I exchanged apologetic glances with my friends, many of whom looked just as baffled. When my mom walked in, her eyes widened in shock as she took in the sight of the chaotic decorations. Her gaze landed on the banner, and I could see the disbelief etched on her face. It wasn't long before that disbelief turned to resolve. Without saying a word, my mother marched toward the display, her expression sharp and unwavering. She took firm hold of the banner and swiftly removed it from its spot. The room fell into stunned silence as every pair of eyes followed her. She carried the massive banner across the room and threw it directly into the trash. Barbara, who had been chatting with guests, turned in horror just in time to see her masterpiece tossed out. Her voice sharp, she demanded, "What do you think you're doing?" That banner was a special touch to celebrate the baby and the family, but my mother stood her ground, replying coolly, "This celebration is about my daughter and her baby, not a display of your personal accomplishments." The tension rose palpably as guests awkwardly watched the showdown unfold. Trying to regain control, Barbara responded, "Well, I thought it would be nice for everyone to know who made this lovely event happen. I just wanted everyone to see how adorable Gary was as a baby." My mom didn't back down. "Barbara," she said, voice steady, "you begged my daughter to let you host this shower after how you treated her last time. This is her day, not a platform for your personal agenda." The entire room went still. Guests glanced at one another, clearly uncomfortable with the very public confrontation. Realizing her plan had backfired, Barbara gave a forced smile and walked away, pretending to rejoin casual conversations. The baby shower continued after that, and I tried my best to stay positive and focus on the kind energy from my friends and loved ones. Still, the tension in the room lingered. I thought we were done with surprises, though I did notice Barbara drinking far more than what seemed appropriate for a baby shower. But I said nothing. We played a few party games, and eventually, the atmosphere began to lighten. People started laughing again, and it began to feel a little more like the celebration I had imagined. Then came the gift-opening portion of the event. I was genuinely touched by how thoughtful everyone had been, each gift showing love and care for the baby. But then came Barbara's gift. She handed me a huge, overly decorated box, with a ridiculous grin on her face. The room went quiet. I could feel my stomach drop as everyone watched. My mom shot her a glare. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to react. Trying not to make the moment worse, I smiled weakly and thanked her, even as I forced down my irritation. I didn't want to ruin the mood any more than it already had been, but it was exhausting. And just when I thought things couldn't get more awkward, it was time for the cake-cutting ceremony my mother-in-law had arranged for an extravagant multi-tiered cake with gaudy decorations. And just as we were about to cut it, she clinked her glass dramatically to grab everyone's attention. At that point, I was already feeling frustrated, wondering what she was about to do next. Everyone looked her way, waiting for her announcement. Then, Barbara proudly declared she had come up with the perfect name for our baby girl. I froze. My husband and I hadn't even finalized a name ourselves. Yet she stood there beaming, announcing that the baby would be named after her great-grandmother, something that sounded like it had been plucked straight out of a Victorian novel. I was stunned. The audacity of assuming naming rights was both infuriating and absurd. Trying to stay composed, I politely explained that Gary and I wanted to choose our baby's name together. It was a decision that should be made by us, the parents. But Barbara wasn't having it. She insisted her name choice was perfect and that I, as a good daughter-in-law, should accept it, especially since she had spent so much money on the baby shower. Her entitlement was unreal. I firmly reiterated that only Gary and I had the right to name our baby, and that it didn't matter who hosted the shower. The decision was ours. That's when Barbara snapped. She began yelling at me in front of everyone, calling me disrespectful and ungrateful. She even criticized my upbringing, saying I should be thanking her instead of denying her this honor. Barbara became increasingly aggressive, jabbing her finger in my face. My mom quickly stepped in and positioned herself between us like a human shield. But Barbara wasn't done. She kept shouting, saying she was the real mommy of the baby because she gave birth to my husband, and his sperm was what got me pregnant. Her words were disgusting and degrading. My mom tried to calm her down, but Barbara just grew angrier. She began insulting me further, saying my mother had done a terrible job raising me. At that point, it was clear she'd had too much to drink. Trying to reason with her was useless. The situation was spiraling fast, and the atmosphere had become extremely uncomfortable for everyone present. Realizing that I had taken enough abuse and public humiliation, I decided it was time to leave. I quietly gathered the thoughtful gifts my friends had brought and left behind the one from Barbara. But before I could exit, Barbara, completely drunk, snatched the gifts from my hands and threw them to the ground. She screamed that I was ungrateful and called me a witch who was tearing her son away from her. People started to take notice. Some even pulled out their phones and began filming the scene. Desperate to control the chaos, I quietly asked one of my close friends to begin asking guests to leave. But Barbara continued her tirade, throwing out vile accusations and creating a spectacle that no one had anticipated when they showed up to celebrate a baby. My frustration turned into fear. Feeling unsafe and unable to de-escalate the situation, I made the difficult decision to call the police. Yes, you read that right. I had to involve law enforcement at my own baby shower because my toxic mother-in-law had completely lost control. When the officers arrived, Barbara launched into full-blown drama mode. She pointed fingers at me, trying to portray herself as the victim and me as the villain behind the chaos. Thankfully, the police saw through her act. They calmly attempted to reason with her, but she was too intoxicated and belligerent. She began yelling at the officers, which only made matters worse. Things escalated quickly, and the officers had no choice but to arrest her on the spot. I left the venue shortly after, accompanied by my mom and a few close friends, shaken, heartbroken, and emotionally exhausted. Since that day, Gary and I have been dealing with the fallout. Barbara has gone full victim mode, playing the guilt card with extended family members who weren't at the event. Many of them live in different cities and didn't witness what actually happened. She's feeding them a skewed version of events to gain sympathy. While Gary understands why I felt the need to call the police, he also believes I went a bit too far. He told me I could have called him or his dad to step in before involving law enforcement. So Reddit, Eta for calling the cops on my mother-in-law for ruining my baby shower and claiming she was the actual mother of my baby? I'm honestly overwhelmed by the response I've received since sharing what happened. I want to thank everyone who supported my decision to call the cops. I had never seen that level of aggression from Barbara before. Normally, I only saw her during holidays, and even then our interactions were brief and civil. The way she acted at my baby shower was beyond anything I could have imagined. I was genuinely concerned about the possibility of physical harm, especially considering the potential impact on my unborn child. Since that chaotic day, every guest who attended the baby shower has reached out to express their support. Some even shared video recordings of the entire incident, which I planned to show Gary. I knew we needed to have a serious conversation about the future of our relationship with his mother. As planned, I sat down with Gary for a heartfelt and difficult conversation. I described in detail how his mother's behavior had escalated, from the initial tension about keeping the pregnancy private to the complete disaster that was the baby shower. I recounted her yelling, the shocking accusations, her bizarre gift, and her meltdown over the baby's name. Then I showed him the recordings guests had shared. Gary watched in silence, his expression shifting from disbelief to horror. Seeing it all laid out so plainly was a harsh reality check for him. "I had no idea it got this bad," he said, shaking his head. "I'm so sorry you had to go through all that." He admitted that he had underestimated the situation and finally acknowledged that I had been right to call the police. He looked devastated, regretful, frustrated, and deeply disappointed in his mother. "I never imagined she could be this toxic," he said softly. He told me he was fully on my side and that my safety, especially while pregnant, was now his top concern. We started talking about the deeper issues at play, her need for control, her obsession with validation, and how all of it had cast a dark cloud over what should have been one of the happiest times of our lives. Gary admitted he was worried about what his mother's behavior meant long-term, and he fully agreed that her actions had crossed a serious line. I told him honestly that I didn't want anything to do with her moving forward. I said he was free to maintain whatever relationship he wanted with her, but I would not allow her near me or our child, not unless she got professional help to address her aggression and entitlement. I wasn't willing to risk my child's well-being around someone that unstable. To my surprise, Gary didn't argue. In fact, he said what she did was beyond disgusting and that he didn't want anything to do with her either. I reminded him that he didn't need to cut ties on my behalf, but he insisted. "She disrespected you publicly. She lost the right to be in our lives," he said. He acknowledged that this wasn't just about the baby shower. It was a wake-up call that revealed how deep the dysfunction really ran. Gary promised he would personally deliver the message to his mother and make it clear that cutting ties was his decision, not mine. I also asked him to warn her. If she ever showed up uninvited at our doorstep, I wouldn't hesitate to call the cops again. It's been a month since my last update, and I'm relieved to say that both the baby and I are doing well. I can't wait to meet my little one very soon. Since that last conversation, Gary and I have cut off all communication with Barbara. Gary spoke with both of his parents, and his father reassured him that he would handle things and do what he could to help Barbara understand the firm boundaries we've set. So far, there's been no further drama. In the absence of Barbara's toxicity, our household has found a new rhythm. There's peace now, a calmness we hadn't felt in months. We've been able to focus on preparing for our baby without any distractions or emotional landmines. It's been healing. The support we've received from our friends and family has been overwhelming in the best way. My parents have been incredible, and our close circle has shown nothing but love and encouragement. Even some extended family members, those who weren't at the baby shower, have since come forward to support us after seeing the viral footage. This journey has been anything but easy, but it's brought Gary and me closer together. We've learned how to stand strong in the face of chaos, and how important it is to protect our peace, especially with a baby on the way. Cutting Barbara out of our lives wasn't an impulsive decision. It was necessary for our mental health, our future, and the environment we want to raise our child in. There may still be difficult moments ahead, but we're finally moving in the right direction. And as we await the arrival of our little one, we're committed to building a safe, loving, and supportive home, one where both the parents and the child come first.